everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach, and welcome to episode 179, Summer 2024 Micro Goals. In this episode, I'm just going to briefly share a couple of goals that I set for myself now that it's officially summer and talk to you about how I determined which goals to set. Where I store my summer goals is in Penzu, which I've talked about a lot on this podcast, and I just made a brief list. And the way that I think through micro goals in the summer are using a couple of criteria. One, they have to be realistic for me to actually meet them. And two, I want to make sure that I'm motivated to meet them in some way. So usually I try not to have these be extremely intense or difficult to do, but I still hold myself accountable. And some of the things that are on this list are things that I don't have time to do during the school year. So one of the things I mentioned on a previous episode, I can't remember what, sometime in the spring, was that during the summer, I do try to lean in a little bit harder on scholarly reading. I find that a little bit easier to do. I can take reading with me if I'm traveling. I might have a little bit more free time that I could spend time with doing scholarly reading. So I don't make a determination about what type of scholarly reading to do, but I did order a couple of books this summer. I have some scholarly articles that I'm trying to get through. And so I just make it a habit that I do some scholarly reading every day in the summer. It's not too difficult for me to do. I typically do this right when I wake up, cup of coffee, do some reading, or before I go to bed at night. I don't put a time limit on it. I'm not trying to get through a certain amount. And I found that this is actually really helpful for me to either do some reading on a current project or to actually be reading ahead for a new project, or even just catching up on the scholarly literature in my field. So that's a kind of an easy one for me to do. I like to read, so it's an easy one to check the box. Another one that I know I've talked about in past episodes and also in some of our time management webinars is to determine ahead of time which days during the week are writing days. So for me, I don't write every day in the summer, but I just have a goal of I've got to hit at least 4 out of the 7 days. So I don't really put a limit on how much time per day for writing or how I do anything else with writing. I just have to hit 4 of the 7 days. And during the week, which is my micro goal number 3, is I have to spend at least 4 hours of writing per week. So those two together, if you're just listening to this in audio and you're not watching it on screen, it's pretty minimal because I got to hit at least 4 days a week. So that could be an hour a day. Or I have to write 4 out of the 7 days. So some of the days, maybe I'm only getting in 15 minutes here or there, but I have to do at least 4 hours during the week. The other thing that I try to do in summer is I try not to work on all the writing at one time again. In this case, I have an article that's kind of been my nemesis has been my project to try to complete. And I had a couple things interrupt me in the month of May to get it finished, but I'm close. And so for June, another micro goal, I didn't put this in the list, but my 4 hours of writing a week are all devoted to getting this article out the door and hopefully off of my plate. That really is the main writing priority this month. I've got some other things that are pressing, but I want to make sure that I have that done. The other two that I have that are listed, one is doing one teaching task daily to set myself up for the fall. And why I'm doing that ahead of time now is that I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I tend to be kind of lax with teaching prep, and then I'm really scrambling at the last minute to get ready for my classes. So this time around, I decided I would rather just figure out something for teaching for fall and get it done ahead of time. So, for example, one of the things that I did was I actually looked at my teaching schedule and took a minute and just looked at where are the classrooms. I'm teaching face-to-face, so I wanted to make sure whatever schedule was in there, I actually could pull it off. It wouldn't be too far for me to get from one class to the other. If there were any changes I wanted to make, for example, if I wanted to be in a computer lab instead of in a lecture hall, I wanted to know about that ahead of time because trying to fix it in August, 2 days before classes start, would be much harder. Other teaching tasks that I'm working on are looking at previous syllabi for classes I've taught before, deciding what projects I want to work on, and putting in any new readings. And so it doesn't matter what the teaching task is, but I just have to check one of them off a day. So I'm doing scholarly writing every day or scholarly reading every day. I'm checking off a teaching task every day. But between those two things, my total time commitment, it could be as small as 15 minutes. It could be as small as 10 minutes a day, depending on what happens. But I do really try to knock out both of those things daily. I've probably missed a few days here and there, but I've been pretty good about it. The last one is cleaning up my faculty office for 30 minutes a week. Somewhere in this podcast, and I know I've done this on some of our webinars, I've actually shown a picture of what my faculty office is. It's a disaster. It has not recovered since the pandemic because during the pandemic, I kind of threw things in there and ran a lot. And being on sabbatical for the last couple of months, I haven't been in it a whole lot. I just never really got to it, but I don't want to start the fall semester that way. So I just put on 30 minutes a week. I've got to go over there. I've got to go to campus and do at least 30 minutes of cleaning. I have not started this yet. So it right now is the first week in June in 2024. But I suspect if I really hold to this, with the exception of 1 week for a summer vacation, I think I'll be able to get it back in some decent shape. So I'll be able to operate out of there in the fall. So just a couple of quick things if you're planning to do some micro goals for summer, particularly for academic parents or if you're doing caregiving. I know when I still had smaller children at home, even with daycare, I couldn't pull off a lot of this stuff as regularly as I do now. But that said, I still don't want to use all the time during the summer to spend, 5 hours reading a day and 5 hours writing a day. I do hold to a schedule where I'm writing between 8 and 12 hours a week, every week during the academic year. And I'm pretty regimented about that. I usually don't have trouble doing that. But in the summer, I really do like to kind of slow down and think about some of these other things. That's not to say that if I end up working on an article one morning or I'm working on a project one morning and I get really interested in it, if I have the whole day and I want to take it, I'm going to take it. But I don't hold myself to that kind of regimen. I live in Ohio. The weather is notoriously terrible here a lot of time of the year. So June tends to be a pretty good month to get outside. And at least for right now, I haven't really put that kind of pressure on. One other thing that I do with the summer micro goals is I do try to treat summer in two halves. So the first half is before July 4th, which is our the American holiday here, because it hits in about a halfway point for me in the summer. And then I revisit summer kind of part two after July 4th. So before July 4th as a marker, I do tend to be very relaxed about what I'm doing. I try to have very small goals, ones that are not difficult for me to meet, but I'm still making some kind of progress. For example, I have a couple of books that I really want to finish. I've got some started. I've got some reading I need to do for another book project. That kind of stuff. I really am enjoying the slower pace of the beginning of summer and not trying to push so hard and rush. After July 4th, though, I probably will need to make some decisions. It's likely I will probably make a summer 2024 micro goals part two. But I do try to keep them micro. I try to keep them small, doable. I've got every intention to try to pull all of these off, with a few exceptions. So we'll see how they go. I will report back and let you know, but I encourage you at this point to set some micro goals of your own. Also, if you are interested in doing consultation with us and you want to set some goals, please let us know. I can be reached at Christine@defendpublishlead.com. Happy writing this week.